I think that most of what makes a computer D&D game work was figured out in 1988. Obviously, modern RPGs are better acted, better written, and look far better. That's not the question. The question is why, even when Dungeons & Dragons took so long to make it to computers, the first title really captured the magic of the tabletop experience. To understand that, let's look at the slow start that D&D had on computers and how a small wargame publisher made it a reality. When TSR released Dungeons & Dragons in 1974, a new way of gaming took hold of imaginations everywhere, the tabletop RPG. Now a household name, D&D was, and still is, the premier way to roleplay, and has inspired countless video games, board games, movies, and even the grammar we use to describe games over the last 50 years. But surprisingly, given all the influence D&D had, for over a decade no one was able to translate the biggest tabletop RPG into a computer game. There was no Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, or Icewind Dale. There was practically nothing. TSR's reluctance to hand out the D&D license and a quickly evolving computer market led to a small wargame publisher making a daring move. When Dungeons & Dragons first released, it was a scrappy, messy, unfinished set of rules written by TSR founder Gary Gygax, who honestly kinda sounds like a D&D villain, and partner Dave Arneson. As the game rose in popularity, TSR made an interesting attempt to simplify and diversify the product by creating a box set with everything one would need to start adventuring, including a far less complicated rule set, and sold it as basic Dungeons & Dragons. But this isn't what we're here to talk about today. See, TSR decided to muddy the waters, and instead of alienating fans of the complicated, rules-driven original, Gygax took to writing a complete set of rules known as Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in 1979, and it's this edition of the game with its complex mechanics that would be seen as the core version of the game. And given this absurd amount of detail in the rules, you would have to be crazy to make a D&D game or any game of this complexity on 8-bit computing systems of the time. Each character has a varying number of hit points. The first-minute melee round assumes much activity. How much damage, astral travel is possible by various means, including magic spells and during the period. Each combatant has the opportunity to get a real prime material. You want that on the same system that could barely run the Oregon Trail? But the early 1980s became a booming time for computer role-playing games. Titles such as Wizardry, Ultima, The Bard's Tale, and their many sequels brought so much of what players loved from D&D pen and paper to a digital world. So an official Dungeons & Dragons CRPG would obviously do gangbusters, right? There was just one problem. TSR had no interest in licensing their property, no matter how successful the market seemed. Some call it mismanagement, others call it sheer stubbornness, but I think it was a strategic play on TSR to keep absolute control over D&D until they found the perfect publisher. Enter SSI. SSI, or Strategic Simulations Inc., was a computer wargame publisher founded in 1979 by Joel Billings. Billings had a passion for strategic wargames and simulated historical battles, and really only saw value in publishing the type of games he liked, and he did not like D&D. This initially caused him reluctance in publishing CRPGs with the SSI branding, but being a small-time publisher of an increasingly niche wargame market meant that things needed to change if SSI were to remain relevant. So despite Billings' reservations, in 1984, SSI released their first commercially successful CRPG, the Ultima-inspired Questron. I said Ultima-inspired. Wizard's Crown followed in 1985 as a landmark title for the company, and saw them shifting from hardcore wargames to a CRPG focus, but still with the signature tactical gameplay Strategic Solutions was known for, and as it turns out, the timing couldn't have been better for SSI. In 1986, the tides would change as TSR began shopping around the D&D license to all major CRPG developers. TSR would hear from major players such as Origin Systems, creators of Ultima, and Electronic Arts, creators of Worms, and I guess more relevantly, The Bard's Tale, as well as at least 7 other big names in the CRPG landscape, according to staff of SSI. But none of these companies would get the license as they were all too big to be trusted, and TSR wanted to remain in control. TSR worried that these big shots would see too much creative control over their beloved D&D property, So just when it seemed like the D&D license would remain off of desktops, SSI stepped in to give it their all. And man, did they really give it their all. SSI envisioned a holistic approach to the D&D license on PC. This wouldn't just be another game you played through and beat. This would be a family of products that all tied into each other. A larger game disc would be released first, including a party creator, the rule and gameplay systems, and a beginner's adventure module. Multiple continuing adventure modules would be connected to the base game and see your party through low, mid, and high level quests. To coincide with the base game would be spell, monster, class, and editor discs to enhance the base game. On paper, this actually sounds kind of cool, and I can see what SSI was going for here, but in 1986, this was absolutely overselling what could be done and sounds like a nightmare to implement. So while most of this holistic approach never actually came to fruition, because let's be honest, it was incredibly far-fetched, TSR saw themselves in SSI, a small but passionate team who understood how to stay true to what made D&D so special. Thus, a 5-year contract was publicly signed at the 1986 Summer CES show, effective January 1st, 1988. SSI would begin work right away. The vision for what this partnership would bring begins with the setting. TSR and fantasy writer Jim Ward would begin working on a new setting to base future campaigns in. This became known as the Forgotten Realms and was created with the intention of being the new de facto generic D&D setting. The benefit of Forgotten Realms being created and announced after the SSI deal meant Forgotten Realms had literal space carved out to host this line of SSI CRPGs from the very beginning. To drive home the fact that this partnership was wholly and completely a D&D set of products, TSR released real-world tie-ins in the form of a tabletop module and a novelization to coincide with the first game. And while a tabletop campaign was inevitable, a novel tie-in released alongside a game in 1988 was truly an ambitious move. These tie-ins helped make the TSR and SSI partnership unmistakable. As SSI began to work on their first flagship AD&D title, they knew they had to go all in. They hired real graphic artists to create the sprite work, as their earlier games were crude and put the strategy first, but this game was going to be visually appealing as well as fun to play, at least at the time. One example of the visual prowess of this new team of artists was in the wall designs. While other games featured 15 or so, this title would feature around 80 different designs according to a preview from Computer Gaming World. The core staff at SSI became the AD&D staff, and any Wargames products were relegated to a much smaller, less involved team. SSI decided that the lead platform was to be the aging Commodore 64, as it saw 35% of all SSI game sales, a whopping 10% increase over their second best-selling platform, the Apple II. While not state-of-the-art in 1987, the Commodore 64 still held a huge percentage of the PC games market and would make a great base platform to port to the other systems. As SSI always excelled in strategic, crunchy combat, they knew D&D had to be no exception, so they used Wizard's Crown and its grid-based overhead battle mode as the basis for combat, and a lot of effort was made to translate Wizard's Crown battles to AD&D style rules. When signing the deal, SSI assured TSR that they could turn the game around in 13 months. This was a hugely ambitious promise, given that they would be the first to translate D&D and all of its complex systems to CRPG in just over a year. But against all odds, they hit their 13-month goal and released their first Gold Box RPG, a nickname given for the physical box SSI's flagship D&D games came in, titled Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Pool of Radiance, in June of 1988 for the Commodore 64, with DOS PC following the next month. The primary mode of coverage and advertising in 1988 was through magazine subscriptions. There was a magazine for every niche you could imagine, and Pool of Radiance featured many full-page advertisement spreads. Early coverage was glowing, as the D&D lineage was unmistakable. So let's dive in and see what makes Pool of Radiance so special. Pool of Radiance is set in the world of Faerun, the land in which the Forgotten Realms takes place. The game is centered predominantly in the quaint city-state of Flan, in the province of Moonsea. This map shows where several of the D&D Forgotten Realms CRPGs have presided over the years, including the Gold Box games. It just goes to show that when a D&D CRPG is created, so much time and attention are brought to the setting to make the Forgotten Realms a lived-in universe full of stories and adventures. And the adventure here is no different. The plot is simple, the stakes are low, and the quests are rewarding. Your merry band of adventurers have arrived in the civilized portion of New Flan, and you are tasked by the city council to investigate and complete quests, known in-game as proclamations, to restore Flan to its once great status. And yeah, that's kind of it. You aren't fighting gods, you aren't the chosen one, and you aren't saving the entire world. You're basically helping gentrify a town. Okay, not exactly. Because monsters have overtaken the many suburbs of town, leaving them basically uninhabited, and your party is exactly the type of adventurers who can clear these roving bands of creatures. Along the way, you'll find secrets, treasure, difficult monster encounters, political intrigue, and the evil that's behind all of this chaos in the city of Flan. It doesn't need to be epic. It's simple and it satisfies because of this. I'm sure many players in 1988 tried to dive straight into Pool of Radiance, kill some monsters, get some treasure, and probably handily got their butts kicked. What needs to be said is that this game is complicated. It's advanced D&D, and that comes through immediately. So it's highly recommended that anyone playing Pool of Radiance reads the manual, as there's invaluable information in there. And that's one of the things players need to understand. The game is built as an experience, and there are real-world documents that coincide with the game. When starting Pool of Radiance, the very first thing you interact with is a peculiar menu of symbols, patterns, and a text input, the Piracy Protection screen. To keep people from playing illegal copies of the game, a system was developed where you used a physical code wheel, lined up the symbols shown, correlated them with the pattern, and typed the words spelled out on the wheel. The code wheel also translated symbols of Elven and Dwarven, known as Esperar and Dethic, to English for solving in-game puzzles. To begin adventuring in Pool of Radiance, a party must be established, and just like real Dungeons & Dragons, each character must have their details customized and their stats rolled legitimately. I think his strength was 18, and his intelligence was something like 18, with a very modest wisdom score of 18. To begin, there are 6 playable races: dwarves, elves, gnomes, half-elves, halflings, and humans. All 6 classic ability scores are accounted for: strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma, as well as hit points. Different classes require the use of different ability scores to get the most out of them. Not every class is here, but a solid list includes clerics, fighters, magic users, and thieves. Non-humans can even take multiple classes for double the benefits, at the cost of leveling each class slower. Each class works best with specific categories of gear, which can be equipped to your taste. I'm really impressed with the level of D&D customization on offer here, as on top of name, race, class, stats, spells, and equipment, you can also choose from a selection of head and body portraits individually, as well as your combat sprite's look and colors for each character, almost like creating and painting each minifigure. It's fairly deep, and it can really take hours to make the perfect party. If you've ever played the tabletop version, this is entirely accurate to real D&D. Once the party is outfitted and assigned, you're dropped straight into the city of Flan. While it's easy to laugh at what the game looks like today, the first-person viewport is literally 12% of screen space. There's still something clean about this setup. You have your perspective, party members, available actions, and the dialogue window, or the digital dungeon master, as I like to think of it. You'll notice this dialogue box reciting lines of lore and flavor text all the time, as well as events tied to your current task. The text reads like a fantasy novel. It's here where you'll be told what NPCs are saying, what their surroundings look like, and what choices are to be made. This little dialogue box is at the heart of the role-playing portion of this CRPG, and this is all you really need to begin moving about the world. Immediately seeing the sights of Flan, the shops, temples, city council, and NPCs, all with layers of interaction. The storytelling happens as you discover the world. There's also the physical adventurer's journal. The game prompts you to navigate to different entries in it, such as overhearing a tavern conversation or deciphering a note from a dead body. It's so cheesy and immersive, I love it. Taverns also serve another purpose, safe resting, a timeless D&D mechanic translated beautifully to Pool of Radiance. You can camp anywhere, of course, and you'll probably need to from time to time, but taverns provide a safe place to do it for some coin, as resting where monsters lurk will most likely stir up trouble. As you rest for as many minutes, hours, and days as you'd like, you heal, you memorize spells, and you pass the time. This screen is also where you can save your adventure. The loop of fighting until you're beaten down, finding a safe place to rest, healing and assigning powerful spells, and doing it all over again is addictive. As you mill about civilized Flan, you'll find many other services at your disposal aside from taverns. Shops sell equipment, different trainers level up different classes, temples heal and revive characters, and the city council is where you view and turn in tasks for rewards. Like most goods and services, these things will cost you the money you have earned throughout your adventure. What feels like a tabletop holdover, money in Pool of Radiance can get really complicated. It bogs down the gameplay bad, as there's about 5 different denominations, and each member of the party is responsible for buying things with their own money, unless you pool it. If pooled, then it's all put together, but if you leave the shop while it's still pooled, you can forget it. Also, it has a substantial amount of weight, so if you don't spend it or divide it, you run out of carrying capacity. It feels like you're always working with a piggy bank full of coins instead of a debit card with easy access to your funds. A positive simplification of the infinite possibilities of D&D role-playing is the parlay system. Once you travel outside of Flan, you immediately enter dangerous areas that are riddled with monsters. But what if you could talk to these monsters? And if so, how would you come across? Pool of Radiance gives you an array of options, letting you play to your party's strengths and the enemy's weakness. Be haughty, sly, meek, nice, or abusive for many role-playing outcomes. Sometimes negotiations and pleasantries just aren't on the table though, and the only way forward is with combat. Probably the most tactical and involved portion of Pool of Radiance, you'll be encountering many combat situations in the form of ambushes and scripted battles that test your might. Here's where we come to another rule that does the gameplay no favors just because it's a D&D game, and it happens to also be the backbone of combat, as it calculates chances of landing a hit, the infamous THAC0, to hit armor class 0. In modern games, higher armor class means more chances to succeed a defense roll, and higher attack means more chances to hit, right? THAC0 turns this idea upside down. The number assigned to a character's THAC0 score is the number the character needs to roll to hit an enemy with an armor class of 0. The enemy's armor class is subtracted from this THAC0 score to generate the true roll this to hit value. The problem with this system is it's totally backwards, and I get why it's to hit armor class 0 specifically, because that's your base chances when there's no subtraction being done, but it kind of feels like the game is saying, here's how good you are against an arbitrary defense rating, and there's math involved for everyone else. Not to mention armor class can go into the negatives. It's not like 0 is maxed out at all. So then you're subtracting negative armor, aka now adding enemy armor class to your THAC0, and it just feels like the whole system wasn't thought out properly. There's a saving grace brought on by Pool of Radiance, and that's computing. The game calculates all of this for you, meaning you don't have to worry about mathematics every time you swing, but it's good to understand it when you're looking at your character sheets. When you enter combat, you're greeted with a bird's eye view of the actual battle. This is a tile-based system, and positioning matters. Move a character who's passing within striking distance of an enemy, they'll get a free swing. Cast a spell from a distance, it'll hit an area of effect. If you have the right weapon and swing next to adjacent targets, you can sweep attack and hit multiple enemies. There's so many strategies as your party becomes more and more capable that this is easily my favorite aspect of Pool of Radiance. With your mage controlling large groups by making them sleep, or your cleric blessing your party to increase their chances to hit, the tactical nature of combat truly is the standout aspect of the game. And that's no surprise given SSI's track record. As I mentioned earlier, proclamations posted by the Flan City Council are the quest your party must complete, and the entire list can be found in the Adventurer's Journal. This leads you to your first real task, clearing the monster-infested slums to the west. Many low-level goblins and orcs and their leaders have made the slums their home, and it's your job to kill them so the city can safely begin rebuilding. This area serves as an introduction to what it takes to carry out quests and progress in the story. Following on from the slums is where the quests really show their variety. Continuing to the cursed and undead-ridden Sokol Keep, you'll be using your code wheel to translate passwords to keep patrolling skeletons from attacking on sight. The curse is broken when the specter of Farron Martinez is dispatched, and Flan's shipping lanes are opened once again. The game eventually opens up and sees you traveling outside the city proper into the wilderness, and discovering a council member by the name of Porphyros to be a traitor, who must be hunted down and stopped. The journey comes to a climax at the central governing center of Flan, Valjevo Castle. A bronze dragon discovered to be possessed by the evil demon Tyrant Thraxus has been behind all of the evil happenings in the area. This fight will test the mettle of your party and your wits, but in a final epic battle, good prevails against evil and Tyrant Thraxus is defeated. The once great city of Flan has been rid of the evil that has plagued it for so long and can rebuild to its former glory. It's not a deep story, but everything is there. Political intrigue, cursed keeps, castles and monsters, and an epic dragon fight to bring it home. My experience with Pool of Radiance was interesting. I did notice a lot of old game clunkiness. As I mentioned, money management is a nightmare, and THAC0 boggles the mind. Additionally, trading items between characters feels slow and abrasive, and there's a roller coaster of difficulty. Slums trolls anyone? Leveling up requires having not only enough XP, but enough gold and finding the appropriate trainer in town. And the controls are entirely keyboard-based, requiring use of the numpad to navigate and scroll lists. But really, those things feel nitpicky because there's so many tools to enhance the experience and polish those rough edges. One tool that comes with modern releases of the game and was another physical book you could purchase separately in 1988 was the official clue book. If you get stuck, the clue book is essential. It includes every map labeled with key locations like encounters and treasure and tips and tricks to getting through the game. And you really can't play Goldbox games without Goldbox Companion, a must-have fan-made tool that keeps track of your party status, can level them up on the spot, a one-click fix button to heal, and a map that always tracks your party's location. My honest opinion, and maybe a hot take, is that we really haven't come that far with Baldur's Gate 3. Let me explain. I just mean that when you play Baldur's Gate 3, you think, wow, this feels just like Dungeons & Dragons. And Pool of Radiance is kind of the same thing, just a 40-year-old version. And that's the highest praise the first true CRPG with a D&D license can get. And I'm not alone in the praise that Pool of Radiance received. Magazines at the time liked the art, combat, and faithful D&D rules. I did find a point-counterpoint review in Computer Gaming World where the criticisms lied in the game being between the basic and advanced D&D rule set, with missing classes, races, and spells. But I think SSI just gave their first title room to breathe, and included more features and high-level play as the adventure continued. Pool of Radiance sold 264,000 copies across its many PC ports, which is 3 times SSI's next best-selling game, Heroes of the Lance, another D&D game released that same month. Even the clue book sold 60,000 copies, more than any non-D&D game SSI had released. It was clear that the partnership with TSR was going to be very lucrative. The success of this first wave of D&D titles, including Pool of Radiance, spawned many more Gold Box titles, including 3 sequels to Pool of Radiance and 8 other games donning the Gold Box moniker. What's amazing about the many Gold Box titles is that SSI was able to realize one small aspect of their original pitch, since you can take your Pool of Radiance party through the entire set of 4 games, leveling them up along the way. SSI with Pool of Radiance crushed it in their first outing, and the TSR partnership was only beginning, as we experienced something of a renaissance with CRPGs like Divinity Original Sin, Pillars of Eternity, and especially Baldur's Gate 3 take some time to remember the game that paved the way. And until next time, thanks for watching. And discovering a council member by the name of Porphyris. And discovering a council member by the name of Porphyris. And discovering a council